2 hours since I put the dough in the bowl to rise. It's possible to manipulate the time it's going to take for your dough to rise by controlling the temperature at which the dough rises and or the amount of yeast that you use in your dough. A lot of people don't really realize that, and people are very painstaking about measuring out the amount of yeast they're going to use. But the yeast is perfectly happy to multiply and multiply and multiply and multiply as long as it's got stuff to eat. So it takes many hours for the yeast to get so full that they make so much alcohol that eventually they all get drunk and die. So if you use the amount called for in the recipe, then you can pretty much figure that it's going to take about the amount of time that the recipe says. If you use a little bit more, it's going to take less time. If you use a little bit less, it's going to take more time. And if you use a lot less, then it's going to take a long time. Sometimes we want this because maybe we don't have time to deal with it in just an hour and a half, or maybe we want to develop more flavors. The longer you let the dough rise, the more developed the flavors will be and the tastier your end product. So anyway, it's been, like I said, about 2 hours. I just literally poured the yeast in my hand and said, that looks good, because I knew eventually it was going to rise as much as I wanted it to. It was just a matter of how long it was going to take. So now I'm going to show you guys this. You can see the dough is nicely risen. One way to check to see if the dough is risen enough is you stick 2 fingers into it, and if those indentations stay, then you know you're good to go. Okay, so now it's time to press the gases out of the dough, what some people call punching down. You don't have to punch it, although it's fun to do that, and shaping it and then letting it rise again in the pan. You can see it slowly deflating. I'm going to help it along just by pushing it. Very nice, not sticky at all, beautifully stretchy. Wonderful stuff. What this punching down does is a couple of things. First of all, it does redistribute the gas bubbles and get rid of huge gas bubbles, but it also redistributes the yeast so it can continue eating. Like if some yeast kind of run out of sugar in their part of the world, they'll migrate over during this whole pressing down business. So now I've got my dough nice and punched down. And now the next step is I want to turn it into a loaf. Now you can just kind of shape it into a loaf and then throw it in the loaf pan, but I'm going to show you the way to do it that's going to keep a really even crumb in your bread. Just going to let it rest. That's going to give the gluten a chance to kind of chill out for a little bit. After about 10 minutes we'll come back and you'll see how much easier it is to deal with. Again, I'm going to grab it, pull it forward, and then pinch it in real tight. Roll it, pinch out any other gas bubbles I see, roll it, pinch, push in. See where I'm making my cylinder. Okay, when I get to the end, I'm going to put where the end meets, pinch it all along. This is going to be the bottom because, well, it's kind of ugly. And we want our loaf to be pretty. Okay. Now, cylinder is like way longer than our loaf pan is. Not a problem. This side is a little bit thinner, so I'm just going to tuck that under. Squeeze him together. Even amounts some. and right in the pan. Take a look at that. You've got plenty of room to rise again. Hopefully you can see that. So again, I'm going to lubricate the top so it doesn't get a skin on it. Smooth it out. Cover it with my lint-free towel and let it rise. Okay, so here we are about an hour later. The bread has magically risen beautifully in the pan. Like I said, I like a big loaf of bread. What I'm going to do to let it expand to its fullest in the oven, so I'm going to slash the top of it. This is just a little French razor blade job we call the lame. Just going to slice right through the center. Slicing through the center allows the bread optimum rise. It also, if there's any air bubbles that are right underneath this outer skin, it'll pop those. So I'm going to brush it with some milk. You can use butter or some oil or some water. But for sandwich bread, I like to use milk. Okay. My oven is preheated to 350 degrees. I'm just going to slap this little guy in there and let it bake until it's done. It'll probably take, for this size loaf, about 45 minutes. I'll be back later to show you the finished product. All right. All right, as you can see, I have taken off my big girl clothes and it's dark outside. The bread baking has taken quite a bit of time. Not much of my time. I spent my time doing lots of other things. What I did to know that it was finished baking was simply took its temperature. You're looking for at least 195 degrees. I usually take mine out somewhere between 200 and 205. If you'll notice, the little slit that I cut on top of it has expanded some more, which meant that the yeast was still doing things. That last hurrah, the last big rise in the oven is called oven spring, and that's when the yeast get really, really active because they start to warm up, and then when they reach 140 degrees, they get so warm, they die. You know, I certainly don't consider myself a baker. I am more of a pastry chef, but there is always a time that you want to make some bread. You've gone through the process with me now. Hopefully you feel a little bit better about baking bread now that you know that you don't have to be really exact and you're looking more for a texture in the dough than an actual specific amount of flour or water in the dough. I hope I've inspired you to make your own bread even if you don't consider yourself a baker. That's the whole goal here. So please go bake some bread and enjoy. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon. Bye-bye.